Hello and welcome ladies and gentlemen to the Fine Disaster. This is Battlefield 4 and in today's video we're going to be covering my initial impressions of Battlefield 1. After having played the game for roughly 10 hours in Origin Early Access, I'm here to give you my impressions, the good, the bad, what still needs to be dramatically improved, and what DICE has already got right on the first try. Now, Battlefield 1 is launching worldwide as we speak. That is to say, for those who have some form of early access by either pre-ordering some special version or maybe even getting the Ultimate Edition depending on. That is to say, some people already have had access. Of course, those with Origin access have already been able to play the game for roughly 10 hours over the last few days. I am one of those, and as such it is fitting to now give the first verdict on what DICE has or has not accomplished and what they still have to do, at least in my opinion, to make Battlefield 1 a true Battlefield title that will satisfy the Battlefield community as a whole. Now, to start off with, let's start on a positive note. Let's pick out some of the things that I think DICE got right this time round. Starting off then with graphics and sound. I know this is obvious and I'm not going to dwell on this point too long, but Battlefield 1 looks gorgeous and sound gorgeous. More importantly, however, it runs gorgeously as well. And I've got a pretty good setup regarding graphics card, processor, and all the shenanigans you need to run a modern shooter these days. Nevertheless, I'm surprised with how good Battlefield 1 runs, despite being so graphically nice and decent to look at. Now, I'm running a 1080, so maybe I'm not exactly the norm user, so feel free to leave your performance and how it's been working on your system if you've already had access to the game down below. But from my perspective, at least, technically seen, Battlefield 1 has been running very well from a performance perspective. Furthermore, I haven't been able to notice any massive problems with map design. That is to say, fundamental problems with map design haven't yet emerged to me too much. Some of the maps have a little bit too much in the regard of flanking routes instead of proper pathing, but that is normal for Battlefield maps. As to say, I'm just unhappy with it. It's the way usually Battlefield maps run these days. I haven't come across any maps, at least yet, where I would say they are beyond saving from a map design perspective, that there is a philosophical problem with the way this map has been designed, or Battlefield 1's maps in general. That's not obviously to say that they are perfect. By far they are not, and there's much tweaking in my opinion that still needs to be done, especially on some maps in particular. Nevertheless, here, first positive impression though, they haven't completely screwed it up when coming to map philosophy and map design. Next up then, we have Operations Game Mode. Now, I love the concept of the Operations Game Mode. There's still much fixing to be done, but the concept itself is truly a breath of fresh air from the usual Conquest, Rush, TDM staple, which is basically made up Battlefield for quite some time now. Yes, they've always introduced new and fun game modes, one of the most notably ones from Battlefield 4 being Chain Link, which was rather nice, but nevertheless, the staple of Battlefield up to now has been Conquest, TDM, and Rush, and I can say with this new Operations Game Mode, I may think that there is now a fourth core game mode to Battlefield 1 that is enjoyable and is going to be frequented by the majority of player base on a regular basis. Furthermore then, Rush. There's a note to be said about Rush. While Rush is still limited to 24 players, and I am categorically objecting to that, I want Rush with more players. At least give us the option, like you do with Conquest, to have maybe, as we do now, a 24 player option, and then maps balanced around maybe 48 players, as we have with Conquest with 40 and 64 players. They have balanced the maps around the player counts rather well, including Sinai Desert, which still isn't the best Rush map, but they have improved it regarding vehicle combat, which is a point we will get into later. Generally, the Rush maps, while relatively empty, seem rather small and focused and designed around the player base they are supposed to accommodate. That is a good step, a step in the right direction, and an improvement from Battlefield 4, where Rush maps seemed rather random and designed without thought. Moving on then to weapons. Now, Battlefield 1 sniper rifles are amongst the most satisfying sniper rifles have ever been in the Battlefield franchise, especially in relation, of course, to the recent games such as Battlefield Hardline and Battlefield 4. The sweet spot mechanic adds a new layer of skill to sniping in Battlefield 4, but just generally for the casual and not too experienced sniper as myself, as I'm having to relearn a number of the sniper mechanics because they have changed from Battlefield 4, and there never was too much of a practice sniper even back then. It is enjoyable to use them, and they are probably, as of now, the strongest class in Battlefield 1. Now, while the sniper rifles are very satisfying to use, that is not to say that other weapons aren't, and at this stage it's important to note that some of the LMGs, for a matter of fact most of the LMGs, are alright to use. Most of the assault rifles are actually relatively satisfying to use, and their balance towards very much close quarter is very good. We'll get a little bit later into weapon balance, overall class balance, and specifically the medic class, because this is where I think DICE has fallen a little bit short of its usual mark and the standard that we have come to expect from class balance when looking back at Battlefield 4 and the relatively good job that was done towards the end of that game's life cycle. Nevertheless, it should be noted that overall, there is a positive impression from the weapon design. There's thought been put into them, and they are usually relatively satisfying to use, specifically, of course, the sniper rifles. Now, last but not least, we have vehicles. Now, this is not necessarily that vehicles have been strengthened and therefore are even funner to use than before, but they've been weakened a little bit. At least the light tank has seen quite a significant nerf, with its ammo capacity being reduced as well as its armor. In other words, it can put out less damage and it's destroyed quicker. Furthermore, there's not quite that many tanks, at least it doesn't seem to be the case on a number of the game modes such as Rush or Operations, which of course we are now playing for the first time. In other words, the vehicle combat now feels balanced. It doesn't feel such a pushover when you come across a tank, and the light tank is no longer the most dominant force on the battlefield. There is now a point to taking more heavy tanks if you've got the necessary players that can support you over TeamSpeak or Skype or some form of communications, because those tanks do have more hit points and do put out more damage and will, in a one-on-one against a light tank, absolutely obliterate it. Nevertheless, the light tank still feels relevant in that if you're alone, playing alone, it is still the best choice. So good job on DICE's side on balancing out the vehicles. They no longer feel like so much of a pushover, and you feel like you have some form of way of combating them now that they aren't quite so many in number. Now, this kind of ends it off with the good stuff, sadly. Now we have to move on to things that are currently interrupting with my kind of euphoria or enthusiasm regarding this game. And it all starts off with the medic weapons. Now, the medic weapons are lackluster, at least in my opinion, in that they don't perform the role they should be. They're not very good at close quarter. This is no surprise. They're not good enough at long range, frankly, against the new and improved sniper rifles, because frankly, there's too much recoil and inaccuracy to make them that good to be able to compete. This is not an MK Mod 11 from Battlefield 4, which is very usable at long ranges, and as such you would think they would be good at medium range, but they aren't. This is because of the recoil model. They're not that great at medium range, especially when looking at targets that are hiding behind cover or head glitching. And this is where I think DICE needs to step up their game and increase the strength of the medic weapons, because it is not only affecting the pick rate of the medics, but also the enjoyment you're having while using them. The medic needs to be an effective infantry tool, otherwise it won't be picked and people won't revive anybody. They've done a great job in making reviving more attractive for the individual player, and I have noticed more revives going out. But me and my friends have discussed this multiple times. The medic is currently probably the weakest class of all the classes in the game, and as such really does need a buff concerning its weapon strength. Not only that, but currently there doesn't seem to be a class that is capable of dealing with targets at medium range. You have the assault class for extreme close quarter, the sniping for extreme long range, and the LMGs, the way they have turned out because of their initial inaccuracy, usually get you killed if you try to use them at medium long range, and as such those two are mostly used for close quarter towards medium range combat. Therefore, the medium range and medium long range combat is still a engagement distance which we don't have proper suitable weapons yet. Now, that is my initial impressions of the medic weapons, having tried out 2 or 3 of them. That's not to say that all of those will be the case, and as I kind of unlock more of them, I will probably be reporting back saying whether or not this is changed or the new weapons are better or worse as the ones we have experienced up to now. Another factor contributing to the lackluster performance of the medic weapons that I quickly wanted to mention before we move on is the fact that we are usually using iron sights with them. This is not with all of them, but most of them, which means of course that we have only a certain maximum degree of accuracy that we can achieve even at medium range, whereas red dot sights and other forms of ACOG sights that we had in Battlefield 4 allowed for a higher degree of accuracy when combating head glitches or other forms of targets that required higher levels of accuracy. With that being said though, let's move on to some technical things. Now, technical both in game design and in stability of the game. Now, I've already rated this game very highly for running relatively well, being very well optimized from a performance perspective. This, however, is very different from a crash perspective. This game has, for me at least, prevented me on multiple occasions from joining servers or lobbies with unknown errors popping up. For a matter of fact, when I first launched the Origin Access, I couldn't get myself into any game, be that an empty or full server, for the first half an hour. It just wouldn't work. It would fail at the matchmaking stage. Now, this being a final release pretty much already of Battlefield, it's embarrassing to once more see technical difficulties. On the positive note, or if you want a silver lining in this, it's not a perspective from netcode or that. It's simply a matter of joining and partying up with friends that has seemed to be a little bit more difficult than usual and that I'm used to from Battlefield 4, and I am confident that this can be fixed and will be fixed once the time comes around for DICE to do that. Another part of the technical, and this is the game design, that I specifically wanted to note is people spawning on other people while in combat. Now, this has always been part of the Battlefield game, but it's not been as bad as it is in Battlefield 1 for a long time in Battlefield 4. I've been killed multiple times already in the 10 hours I've played this game when engaging directly in combat with somebody, already having done roughly 50% damage when their friends decides to spawn on them, preferably, of course, with a shotgun to end me right there and then. Now, this is a mechanic that is unacceptable to anybody who is semi-competitive about how they play and care about how they perform on the battlefield, so DICE really needs to look into somehow making or ensuring that the in combat registration system works a little bit better than it is currently now. Another thing that I've noted, and also my friends have noticed that I've been playing with throughout these 10 hours, is Battlefield 1 is a more casual title than Battlefield 4. Now, for some people, this is a positive point. For somebody who spent over 1,000 hours in Battlefield 4, this is something I am a little bit sad to see. And this kind of manifests itself in a number of features of the game, in the menus of the game, but most importantly in the attachment system that is now very much lackluster, with only basically 3 variations of each gun and a magnification option and skin option, as well as bayonet option for the weapons that have them. There's no real attachment system with grips, custom sights, or any kind of other barrel attachment to change up the gameplay in Battlefield 1. And while some people will welcome this change in that it simplifies weapon selection, me, somebody who likes to look into the stats of a weapon, in the inner workings of a weapon, and try to adjust its behavior, I enjoyed the attachment system, even though it was relatively complex in Battlefield 4, and as such I'm very much going to miss it come Battlefield 1 and the lack of thereof. Now, moving on then, there is another thing that regards casual. There's a lot of gadgets, once more as we had in Battlefield 4, that strictly speaking shouldn't really be in a game that claims to be relatively competitive. Now, of course, Battlefield is no esports game, and we're always going to have things like trip mines, that's claymores, C4, mines, and mortars. However, especially concerning mortars and trip mines, they are more powerful than they ever have been. Now, I haven't faced too many trip mine problems, so I'm not going to complain about something I haven't found on the battlefield very often. I think I've only been killed about once or twice by a trip mine in the total time of 10 hours, so I'm not going to complain about that. Mortars, on the other hand, are absolutely insane. They are so much easier to use when compared to Battlefield 4, and yes, while some see this as a combat version to kind of engage with campers or snipers, on the other hand, it's just a way of also dealing with large amounts of infantry pushing up to you on rush or operations. It's a cheap way to get kills, and it's not really competitive, and it's very frustrating when you're trying to move up on a heavy enemy mass and you just get mortared to death. It's not a fun game mechanic, and what Battlefield, in my opinion, needs to recognize is what Overwatch has done: put fun of the game and competitive at the first place of importance, and then later feature rich and fancy stuff after that. Now, this is of course controversial, and you may think differently, but in my opinion, the stuff like mortars and trip mines shouldn't have been in the game in the first place, and certainly shouldn't have been as powerful as they are of now. Now, 2 points remaining, and these are truly the most important. At least in my opinion, these are the ones that annoyed me the most and caused me to get the saltiest I've been in Battlefield for quite some time while playing the Battlefield 1 beta. And the first of those is gas grenades. The gas grenade spam is insane. Already now, day 2 of playing Battlefield pretty much, and gas grenades are going everywhere. And they're very annoying to use as well. Sometimes they can be difficult to recognize. I've died multiple times to gas grenades. And furthermore, they're locking off key parts of the map, which basically change map balance and map design. Now on some maps it doesn't matter. Open big conquest maps, gas grenades are ineffective and unimportant. On smaller game modes, however, the gas grenade problem becomes much more significant, and that usually in a rush game mode, especially now that we have very small maps designed around 12 players on each side of the team, you have only a set number of paths. Those can be blocked off by gas grenades, which is alright for the assault player who puts on his masks and just hip fires everybody down, but even in those cases, enemies hiding behind the gas in good cover positions are going to be difficult to kill with hip fire weapons only coming out of the gas, seeing the enemy suddenly, and then having to try and hip fire or take off your gas mask. All the other classes have no opportunity to in any way be effective against the enemy. The LMGs are not great for hip firing. This has always been the case. This likely always will be the case in Battlefield. Neither are, of course, sniper rifles, and the medic weapons aren't great at hip firing either. And you, of course, can't aim down sight while you're using your gas mask because, of course, this is the way they've balanced out gas masks in Battlefield 1. So I think this needs to be addressed either by weakening the gas grenades, decreasing the amount you can carry, or more importantly, maybe even decreasing the time they stay running up around. So much like you had the incendiary grenade in Battlefield 4 that was only around for a few seconds, maybe the gas grenades shouldn't be hovering around for so long, enabling paths to be freed up much quicker. Now last but not least, we have the Behemoths. Now, these are, the new evolution of Battlefield 1. They're the big feature that's advertised in all the trailers. And much like Levolution, it's to some extent not impactful on the game in some game modes. And unlike Evolution, it's absolutely detrimental to any kind of map balance or game mode in other game modes. Now, to name a specific example, if you try and engage in some form of operations game mode where you defeat the attacking team in the first or second run, you will be faced with the attacking team coming in on an airship. Now, the airship isn't too bad on Conquest because it can only, of course, control a relatively small part of a large Conquest map, which means you stay off those objectives and go capture the rest while the airship is dealt with by competent pilots. In the case of operations, though, the map is much smaller, meaning that the airship can cover pretty much the entire map with its weapons. And you will have seen today a roughly 23 kill streak that I achieved easily within 3 minutes of just first time stepping into the airship. Now, considering that there weren't that many players on the game mode of operations that you're seeing me wreck with the airships, I destroyed the entire enemy team within 3 minutes from a position which they couldn't do very much to beat me. This is a fundamental flaw in the map design. As soon as you beat the attackers first time round on operations, you are going to lose the next round, and you're going to get a heavy blow to your kill death ratio. You're going to die again and again and again from the sky above. The weapons are extremely strong from the airship, and the airship has a huge amount of health. Furthermore, moving on to other maps, such as the Alps map in the Italian Alps that we were playing, the entire map was inaccessible because of the airship when I played it on operations. Everybody was hiding around one single objective down in a bunker, waiting for the poor few attackers who dared to come down there to kill them. Now, that is not a fundamentally good map balance design or map philosophy when the entirety of 30 or 40 players is in very small confined spaces instead of using the entire map to fight out the battle. This is not the way I have imagined game mode or of operations, and I doubt DICE itself has imagined it this way, but once more, with a gimmicky feature, they've managed to destroy any kind of chance of competitive gameplay when it comes to the game mode of operations. I need to somehow fundamentally change the way the airship or the Behemoth in general work on operations. Now, the problem hasn't been too significant with the other Behemoths. The Dreadnought is relatively annoying, and the armor train is a pain as well, but you can still win with those Dreadnoughts against you. The airship, on the other hand, is basically unbeatable in that it enables a team to rush through at least the first 3 to 4 sets of objectives with only one remaining that they need to capture after the airship has finally gone down. And this is what I think DICE needs to fix if they want me to play operations as game mode anytime soon, because I'm not going to go into the lobby just to beat the team fair and square one-on-one with the same resources to then on the same map next round get obliterated by a modern and improved version of the AC-130 just now on World War I Battlefield 1. And with that, we've completed a relatively lengthy commentary on my initial impressions of Battlefield 1. Now, obviously, these are still subject to change as I experience Battlefield 1 in a fuller, more populated environment now that it has officially come out worldwide and is no longer in Origin Access only. There'll be more players now that you can also play it with your pre-release or pre-order bonuses that many people have got. And come the full release, I will get again a different impression of Battlefield. Some of the factors probably will change. Some of the problems may be fixed soon. Others may be more fundamental and I'm just going to have to get used to them. Anyway, feel free to leave down below your opinions or your experiences if you've had the chance to play Battlefield 1 yourself. Feel free to, of course, also leave down below video suggestions and weapon suggestions. A lot of the topics we covered in today's video have only really been scratched on the surface and will require videos on their own to cover why they are good, bad, or how they could be improved. So feel free to leave down video suggestions and opinions, of course, as always, in the comment section. Furthermore, for those of you still interested in Battlefield 4, I've been getting a lot of comments regarding if I couldn't at least maintain a small amount of Battlefield 4 content, because it seems like quite a few of you are not moving on to the next Battlefield. So feel free to see down below a little bit of a kind of setup poll I've got going, where kind of you upvote the comment that is more applied to your situation. One of them is going to be, I'm done with Battlefield 4 and no longer interested, while the other is going to be, if you could not please make an occasional Battlefield 4 video, and I will take into consideration your opinion on the matter when deciding my future upload schedule and the future content that I put out. But with all that being said, let's wrap up this lengthy video, and at this point I'd only like to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.